Welcome everyone to our bi-weekly outreach and network guild meeting. Back to our regularly scheduled time for now. We will see. Things always change eventually. Um, we can get started by I'm happy to lead us in some grounding and centering of the land, which is how we always start. We start by centering the land because the land was here long before we were people, and the land will be here long after we are gone. Everything that we are and experience comes from the land and will return to the land, including our own bodies and the bodies of our descendants. And as we center the land, I invite you to close your eyes if that's comfortable for you. And we're going to just feel into our bodies as part of the land, as our little section of all that is. We might start by noticing our breath moving in and out of our bodies, not trying to change our breath or control it, just notice what's happening there. This constant inhale and exhale of energy, oxygen, and carbon dioxide with our environment. You might start to notice what it feels like to be in your body, to be a body right now. Noticing the weight of your body on the seat, being held to the land by gravity, by the gravitational pull of this entire planet. As you feel the weight of your body and that pull downwards, I invite you to imagine roots moving down from your body, from your feet, your legs, your lower body. Roots that start to grow down beyond the foundation of the building into the soil, growing down further and further, touching dirt and rock, sand, maybe clay, touching water, making contact with mycelium and bugs and worms, all kinds of bacteria, microorganisms. Just visualize those roots anchoring in the earth, so strong, very spread out. And the roots are receiving nourishment from the earth and also providing possibly homes and food to little critters and little beings. With our roots in the earth, we are very much part of the web of life, part of everything that is. Just notice what it feels like to be nourished in this way in the depths of the earth. I invite you to slowly travel with your attention back up those roots, up through your body, which is the trunk of the tree. And as we move up, 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 our arms and our neck and our head become branches with leaves and maybe fruit reaching up to the sky, touching the sky, receiving the light of the sun, the carbon dioxide in the air. And here too, we receive nourishment, and we also give nourishment as the tree exhales into the atmosphere. Notice what it feels like to be nourished in this way, to be connected above the earth, above the ground. So above and below, we are rooted, we are reaching out, we are sharing nutrients with the planet, with our relations. As you've noticed this sense of connection, I invite you to cultivate some gratitude in your heart for this connection, for the interdependence and interrelationship of all beings, and for all the peoples who have stewarded this connection, stewarded these lands, including the indigenous peoples of the land where you live. I thank the Tonkawa people of this land and all indigenous peoples who are very much still here, still alive, still resisting colonization and imperialism and capitalism, to whom we can pay a debt of not only gratitude, but also working towards right relationship, working towards healing our planet for the generations to come. So I invite you to transition out of tree mode back into person mode, or you can stay in tree mode if you like. You might wiggle your toes and your fingers. And when you feel ready, you can open your eyes and join us back in the circle.
I so needed that. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Of course, now
And
I
we
want to
could,
take a nap.
I know, I want to go play outside, even though it's 108 degrees,
Oh, golly.
literally.
Wow.
Yeah, it's rough.
Mm,
Um, we do a check-in question. Speaking of the weather, a tried
hmm
and true oldie and goodie. How is your weather today? Internal, external, however you'd like to answer that. Over to
mm.
you, Ben.
The actually the the question works. This morning has been gray with a threat of rain, and it's been cool and not feeling at all like August. And I've been feeling gray and foggy, misty, and the sun is coming out, and I am feeling like the sun is coming out. So yeah, works for me. Over to you.
It's very sunny here, very hot. Um, and after that guided experience, I'm feeling more sunny. I was feeling kind of cloudy and um kind of a sense of confinement after working all day, but now I'm like, oh, I'm feeling pretty good. So yeah.
Awesome.
All right, so I will share my screen. So we have some very specific action items to attend to today that I definitely think it would be good to prioritize. They are scheduling the navigation sessions, scheduling the webinars, and scheduling the deep adaptation sessions for the fall calendar. Um, Other than that, there's kind of an ongoing question for me about when our guild meeting time, do we want to keep it at this time? Do we want to change it? I'm not really sure about that. And then after the fall schedule is finalized, which is hopefully at our coordination circle next week, it would be really great to get a newsletter out with everything in it. And we don't necessarily have to talk about that today. It's just something to keep on the radar as an upcoming task.
Mhm.
Um, and with the newsletter, deriving some social media posts, putting the fall schedule on the website, as well as I was also thinking about um, kind of a general social media overview, like, do we want to change the description on Instagram at all? Do we want to adjust the link tree? Do we want to look at the
Mhm.
website? There's some refresher stuff that we haven't done in
Mhm.
a while. Um, so yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking about for the meeting. And I'm curious, Ben, if you have any thoughts, considerations, anything to add.
Definitely nothing. Well, I think I don't want to add anything because that sounds like more than enough to try to tackle. And I think it is. Let's just dive in and yeah, move through. I think I'm in the same boat. I think it's seasonal. The fall schedule is also seasonal review, and so some of those questions that you're posing are, I think, just good seasonal questions to come back to. Roland did for heart work, or no, for finance, he brought up sort of checking in with membership in the guilds, just seeing, how people are, do they, how do they want to be involved in the guilds, and, checking on that. So, but I think in general, what you have proposed feel like the priorities, and yeah, and likewise, like, we start with the fall schedule, start with the big picture, and then start to work out the details.
Awesome. Sounds good. So we can go to navigation sessions. I went ahead and transferred the results of the poll, the results that seemed most useful, um, to this task just for ease of viewing.
Awesome.
Um, we have the four most popular times, which were 6 out of the 7 respondents are available at these times, including the two of us who have been the primary facilitators. And then we also have 3 to 4 other times that are workable as well.
Mhm.
So my thinking is that we could go around and do considerations about, so take a minute to look at these dates and times and do some considerations, especially around like how many sessions do we want to have per week or per month. And in the past we've done, one week there's a session at this day and time, and the next week it's a different time. So the times were alternating. So there's different ways that we could do it. So
Mhm.
yeah, I will pass it to you, Ben, for considerations.
And I'll just do one consideration at a time. We can go back and forth. One is, if possible, we should double check with April, because I know she didn't fill this out, uh, and April's also been facilitating the navigation sessions. So um, that's my first consideration. Over to you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, I think having sessions at pretty like fairly different times is a good idea. So, where instead of scheduling 2 afternoon sessions, like one morning, one afternoon, for example, um, just to cover more people, hopefully.
Mhm.
Over to you.
We had an interesting conversation at Heartwork yesterday about Roland was talking about doing, in addition to navigation sessions, um, agreements circles. And so we started to compare and contrast, what were the differences between, and we've already talked about with the navigation sessions, changing them a little bit, like maybe they're themed, something that, this is going to be a long consideration, but it's all one point. uh, so, what is the purpose and therefore the proper structure for the navigation sessions? And how do they relate to the agreement sessions? And I feel like this has something to do with also the timing. You know, is it would is it better to have one regular navigation time and one agreement time, or to have multiple navigation sessions? And And I was mentioning the Foodland strategic planning last week, and one of the ideas that came out of that session was very much like navigation sessions.
Mm.
So it's also thinking about how we might be able to offer these through our through allies. And but then that also has a little bit to do about how the navig so the at the Foodlands, it sort of was coming up more challenge oriented, sort of more about what is a challenge that for Foodlands, it's community farms. What's a challenge that community farms are facing? And, make having a dedicated time for that. Um, Anyhow, so I think that's enough in that. So I'll throw it over to you again.
Yeah, I think these are really good points. And also for the sake of anybody who's watching who's not necessarily clear on the types of sessions and what they are, to me, navigation sessions are, I like the idea of picking a theme because it's a way to provoke sort of, oh, I struggle with this aspect of the topic and I want to really use this time to dive in. It's sort I and kind of in the vein of Foodlands, like there's a conflict or a tension here or a problem that I want to address using this process.
Mm-hmm.
And the navigation session does include agreements, but it's like, can we agree this is how we're going to be together? Okay, now let's move into talking about this specific thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Whereas the agreement circle is the whole thing is how do we want to be together? And to me, agreement circle is a lot about culture building. It's like very intentional culture building.
Mm-hmm.
Navigation sessions does that too, but it's different. And it's a different focus. The agreement circle is really like this is a space for our stuff to come up because we're all sharing about how do we want to be? How do we relate to each other? So there's a lot of similarities and there's differences, which feels very in the vein of our work is like there's a lot of both and happening.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and also making it clear to everybody that these are both tools that you can take to your communities. The agreement circle is a really, if you're starting a lifeboat, if you're starting a community, this is a really great place to come together and be like, what are our values? Like, how do we want to be? And then navigation sessions is like, once we're kind of working together already, oh, we've hit a roadblock or we've hit a tension. Here's a way to navigate that. So I think they're different and they're not totally different. And
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. Like that's good. They don't need to be. Um, that's what I'll say for now. Over to
Mm-hmm.
you.
Yeah, I totally, and I think yeah, this has been really useful because I think you put your finger on it about and it so there's also part of the AIM Act Reflect, or one of the things that came clear to me as I was sitting through a lot of the Foodland stuff and some other things that have been going on is the focus on verb rather than noun. That there's sort of a process orientation, and that um more recently here in, I can't even remember where, but it was a lifeboat conversation, and we were talking about Boyd's, the computer program that simulates flocking birds. And there are the infinitely complex pattern of the flock is generated by three rules, two of which contradict each other. And I think that this is exactly what we're talking about, that there is the culture building, and they're both in play at the same time. So there's problem solving and culture building. And the navigation sessions really are more about creative problem solving. That is, it's generative problem solving. It's problem solving without fixing, if that works. It's not about hitting it with a hammer, but it's about a sort of here is a problem, and there's an action orientation that does not exist in the agreements in the same way. So I think that is a really and that the problem solving only works if you've got the foundation of the cultural agreements. You can't really go into the generative problem solving unless you have this shared understanding. And likewise, actually, I think that the problems, you need the problems to kind of ground the agreements, because otherwise they become very airy-fairy, sort of um shoulds. They become shoulds and aspirational rather than, what's it mean? What's a practice of how we want to show up? And hello, hi, Roland.
Hey,
I
So I will pass back to you, Ronnie, and then you can integrate Roland and we can go on from there.
Yeah, so we are doing considerations about, so we're broadly talking about scheduling the navigation sessions. And we've been sharing thoughts about the navigation sessions and the agreement circles. How are they similar? How are they different? What are the purposes of each? Um, Hopefully leading to how many of each do we want to schedule? How do they sort of, what is the dance in between them? Um, I really agree. That point about how they need each other. If we're gonna address conflict and tensions, we need to know what our values are, what our shared values are, and what our agreements are, and where we stand with each other. And part of how we do that is by coming up against issues and navigating them together, and asking hard questions and grappling and all of that. So I think presenting them in that way feels important to me. So because that's kind of been missing. Like on the farm, we're doing agreement circle every day, and we're doing navigating tensions all the time. But in the online lifeboat, that we've only been doing navigating tensions. So I think it makes a lot of sense to weave in the agreement circles. And I would say some equal balance of both seems appropriate to me. Um, and having each of them, let's see, I'm taking notes. Having each of them at least twice a month, I think would be good. I'm curious what other people think about that. Over to you, Ben.
Yeah, I think this is talk about navigating tensions. There's that tension between overschedule and regularity. April was saying that if if we were to do the agreements weekly, she probably wouldn't pop in. She would pop in very sporadically because it would just be too much to add to the calendar. Whereas if it was once a month, then that would be something that she would make time for. And and I feel like I was going to propose, since we kind of have been going into the bi-weekly routine, it could almost be that they alternate, that it's an agreement circle and then a navigation. And actually, you know what? If we did it that way, that could be. I'm just I don't know if this is a good idea. It's just an idea that popped into my head. But if we had two times, Monday morning and Thursday afternoon, and they met twice a month, and one was an agreement circle and one was a navigation circle, then that would mean, and then, right, so each of those, that would be two agreements, the Monday and the Thursday, two times a month, and two navigations times a month. But people could really just select into one or the other, or they could opt for more than one. So, if you wanted them bi-weekly, you could have them bi-weekly, or you could have them monthly. Just an idea. just a thought. And I will pass over to Roland.
Okay, well, and since I wasn't able to be there for the first bit, I don't know if I'll be talking over anything else. I just wanted to come back to how I was talking about the difference between the navigation sessions and the agreements at the Heartwork meeting, to distinguish between them. And the navigation session for me was more sort of the early spirit of the navigation session, which was for projects, working on projects with other people, like bringing to, so that sort of hive minding projects. Because, and then the navigation sessions essentially turned into what I'm thinking of as agreements, an agreement circle, where people talked about where they were at, what they were feeling, how they were coping. And so for me, the distinction between the two is one is more material. They're both practical. One is more material for projects that people are working on, and this can be sort of social organizing projects as much as it can be, building a pond. And then the agreements is, how do we want to work together? How do we want to be together? How do we want to be with ourselves? And how do we want that relationality to be? Because and also I've noticed over the years, people want the practical and material, or not the practical, but want the material. And in fact, and in a way, they expect the material, and then they find themselves in a situation where it isn't. And sometimes people love it. I think most of the time people really, really enjoy it. But I wonder if that isn't, anyway, if that's, it isn't a missing ingredient, is a forum where people can also work together on material projects. So, and in terms of the number of times, I quite like Ben's proposal, and I was going to bring up April's point of whether or not she would show up if it was more frequent. And that was also a question that that was part of the Heartwork discussion, was is this something that would be sort of ongoing indefinitely? Is it something that's offered periodically?
Right. Yeah.
As part of a cycle? I'm thinking mostly of the agreements. I could see if the navigation sessions is more about projects, that could, to me, that it would make more sense to have that as an ongoing thing. The agreements could be part of a cycle along with the 6 conversations and the 4 questions and whatever else comes up. Or it could also be sort of an ongoing thing, which having it less frequently makes more sense if it's something that goes on longer, and then adding sessions, like adding more sessions if there's more demand. I don't know, or sort of, I guess, AMAC reflected. We can start to verb that. We're AMAC reflecting it. And also that part of the agreements circles is also, it could also be part of the education program, that people can come to online agreement circles for the Lifeboat Academy International, and it's also teaching people how to have their own agreement circles in whatever context makes they want to bring it to. So I don't know if anyway, that's where I'm at in jumping into the conversation here. Over to Ronnie.
I really appreciate the point about navigation sessions as a place for people to bring their project, which is how it was conceptualized from the beginning, right? And so, but it became, Linda gave the feedback of, I didn't realize this was about lifeboat building. I thought we were just having navigation sessions about whatever. And so we could be more clear what it's about. And I think that could work well with having a theme. So if, and maybe not, I'm not really sure, but, you know, or even just asking, instead of what's your tension this week, like what's your tension in your lifeboat? What's your resilience tension this week? And a potential topic could be people. We're going to talk about dealing with people this week, and how are you dealing with people in your project. We're going to talk about money this week. We're going to talk about resources. We're going to talk about land. All of these different elements. I think this could go really well in tandem. And in terms of, is this ongoing indefinitely? My guess is probably, and also like, let's plan for this season. What do we want to try out? What makes sense based on where we are? And I like Ben's idea about the alternating time. So that would still be 2 of each per month, right?
Mhm.
Which that seems doable to me. And they're going to be alternating time, so that's hopefully more accessible to people. And in terms of what are the topics, I think for agreement circle, you don't really need a topic. This is the place of what do we value? How do we want to be together? It's the magic of the circle time. To me, that's my understanding. And then for navigation sessions, I'd like to figure out a way of what is our process for deciding the topic for each one, especially if we're thinking about inviting people in. You know, I was talking to Austin about facilitating navigation sessions, and that he could bring a topic to the one that he does, or the ones that he does, and he was really into that. So yeah, what is our process for deciding that? And also I'm thinking about, in terms of today, like getting them on the calendar is definitely a priority.
Mhm.
Over to
Mhm.
you, Ben.
Yeah, and I think getting it on the calendar and thinking, aim acting, reflecting, what's the experiment? The experiment's for the fall. And I think so we don't even have to worry about, is this ongoing in perpetuity? Let's, try it for the fall and see. And that's our, so that's our period. Let's just figure out how we want that to work this fall. We'll revisit in the winter and then see what we do in the spring. I think this all feels really like it's coming together. It was originally the intention that people would bring project tensions to the conversation. And one of the consistent problems we've had is that people don't have projects, or they're not thinking of themselves as being project leads. They're still thinking that they're pondering potentially maybe doing a project. And it was sort of the email we got recently from Sandra, where she's stepping back because of the place-based part of it. I was a little frustrated because I feel like she didn't get the memo that the other projects that she wants to pursue are lifeboat projects, and that we could still be a supportive network for helping those projects move forward. So I think I think that the solution to this is the themes. One of the dangers I see for having people bring project issues is that they could come. Actually, I won't even say danger. There are 2 ways of thinking about this. I could come and say, I am having this problem with my project, please help. And everyone help me think through this issue. And I'm not keen on that. I think it has its place, but I think it encourages people to go in and fix it and do a lot of you should kind of stuff. and everything about the lifeboat is avoiding shooting on each other. So, but I think that's where the theme could come in really handy, or distributed leadership for, different people leading different navigation sessions. And you can bring the theme for your project, but we still all reflect on how it relates to our own projects. And I'm also wondering that I think we've all mentioned that it's a little bit what we're doing together in the lifeboat circle, but then the goal hopefully is people take it back to their own local community and engage in an agreement conversation there and navigation sessions there where they use it for problem solving. So I think I'm going to pass on at that point, because I feel like that's figuring out the little fine tuning about if the expectation. So actually, no, one last thought is, if we are thinking about the fall semester as a semester and as the Lifeboat Academy being for people who are building lifeboats or who are about to engage in lifeboat building, then participating in the agreements circles and the navigation sessions is part of your education to then take, we can be really explicit about this is about learning the skills that can be useful in your own local community. And that might be a really useful framing. And it could, and then it's also for this fall semester, sign up for this cycle and you'll get to experience it enough that maybe you feel comfortable, by January, you're just going to go back to your own community, do them there. And then you only have to drop in occasionally. Or maybe you still want to, you still find them valuable and you want to keep coming. Anyhow, a bunch of thoughts. Over to you, Roland.
I'm reflecting on other experiences that I've had in things that you've facilitated, Ben, and I kind of wonder about, and I feel like you've done this before, or that we've, but inviting people to something that it's either people coming with their projects. It's like the Pender Earth thing, either you have a project that you're coming with, or you come to the first session to talk about a project, like establishing a project. And then everyone's going to have different projects, potentially, probably. And then talking about the different projects and where there might be overlap in working out problems. So that would be, you would be able to get your themes for the sessions from the actual projects that people have come up with in the initial session.
Mm-hmm.
Either that they come up with it, or that they come to the session with. And that to me makes it feel more grounded and direct and relevant to the participants, because it really becomes not something that is being imparted to them, but it is their projects, plural, that they're working on separately but together. Over to Ronnie.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. That's really, and then the sessions themselves, they are iterative. Their aim, act, reflect is built into the whole process, instead of the navigation sessions feeling like, for some of us, very, very connected to what we're working on, and for other people, kind of like, I had this conflict with this one person this week, and it's like, okay, but how do we stay connected to the big picture? Like, what are we actually building? And so I really appreciate those points. I'm feeling ready to look at scheduling for these. Any objections? Okay. So I'm going to scroll back up to where I had put the times from the poll that worked best for people. Keeping in mind that April, who's one of our facilitators, did not fill out the poll, so we don't yet know what times might work best for her. But Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays had the most votes. Monday, Wednesday afternoon works well for people, and then Tuesday morning, late morning, and this is all Pacific time, works well. We also have some Thursday and Friday times that work for a good number of people as well. So if we're talking about distributing the meetings or the sessions, both time-wise and day-wise, I would propose one of the days be earlier in the week, one of the days be later in the week, and then perhaps a morning/midday time, and then a later afternoon time. I will say that to start. Over to you, Ben.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. I was thinking along the same lines of trying to vary the offerings. But it is interesting that the best availability seems to be early in the week. And if we look at morning times, there's only two morning times that, and one's kind of late morning. So I would be, and I'm also thinking about Europe and and Australia. So it would be, like the Thursday afternoon would be late enough for people in the Antipodes, and none would really be early enough for people in Europe, but I don't know if that's really anything we need to worry too much about. I agree with your basic premise. I think, yeah, let's pick two. Let's vary one morning, one afternoon, and different days. I think I would be tempted to go with probably like Monday afternoon and Tuesday morning, and then alternating weeks. But I'm agnostic. I could be swayed, but that would be where I'd lean. Over to you, Roland.
Definitely Monday afternoon, sorry, over Ronnie.
Yeah. I like the Monday, also keeping in mind that our coordination circles are on Mondays.
Mhm.
Does this mean we'd have a meeting every Monday, right? We'd have a navigation session or an agreement circle.
Every other.
Oh, okay. So it could be offset from the coordination circle.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Well, I love Monday then. Monday's great. The second day, Tuesdays at 10:30. Tuesdays don't work for me personally, but that doesn't, that's not a deal breaker. Um, I'm kind of feeling maybe the Friday 11 a.m. time, um, as opposed to or instead of the Tuesday time. I'm just gonna bold it as something I'm, yeah, considering. Um, I can't exactly say why I like it. I just feel like I like it. So yeah, over to Ben.
I'm kind of in the same boat. I kind of like it. I think so. And I also feel like we did the doodle poll and it's given us it's data. It's not, you know, a commandment. So what I would propose is the Monday afternoon alternating with the coordination circle. I think that's a brilliant time. And then Friday, but maybe move it a little earlier. And when I say alternating with coordination circle, not necessarily 4:30, it could be 2. But only alternating weeks. Yeah, I think that feels good to me. Oh, and then Friday would have to alternate with Friday morning would have to alternate with legal, finance and
Mm.
legal. If unless we change that. But that's easy enough. There's nothing on the alternating Fridays. Over to you, Roland.
And the poll didn't include any evenings, is that correct?
I don't think so. I think there were some 5 o'clock times. Oh yeah, they're Thursday 5 o'clock. There were some 5 o'clock times and they didn't get picked.
Okay. So yeah, AMAC Reflect Monday and Friday. Friday 10:30. Do we want to try to have some sort of consistency about, sort of session times? We tend to have things at 10:30. Okay, over to Ronnie.
That works great for me. I was a little worried when you said earlier Friday because I have a standing appointment from 9 to 10 your time. But if it were 10:30, I could easily make it. So I like that time. And there could be room to say we schedule these, we do it for 3 weeks, or we do it for a month if nobody's showing up on Friday when we reassess. So, but we have to start somewhere. So I think so it would be 10:30 to noon. I think that's a good proposal. Over to Ben.
I like it. Thumbs up.
Fantastic. Oh yeah, over to you, Roland.
Great. Over to you, Ronnie.
Okay. So we decided what days they are, and now I'm curious, when will we start? So I'm gonna stop my share. Ben, do you by chance have the Miro calendar handy?
I do. Well, and I was just I put in a navigation session. I plopped it. Oh, that's the wrong month. I was just going and grabbing a post-it note. And if we started, we don't want to do anything the first week of September, so it's the second week or beyond. Currently, finance and legal would be on the 6th and 20th. So it could be the 13th or the 27th would be the first in that cycle. And then there would be the other one, which would be alternating the 16th and the 30th. So if we were going to do Monday and Friday, alternating finance and legal and coordination circle, we know our weeks. They do happen to be offset weeks, which is brilliant. And then, so it's really, do we want to start on the 13th or the 16th? And then go from there. Again, I'm agnostic. We could start on the 13th. Yep. Over to you, Roland. 13th or the 16th. Starting on the 13th, the 16th, or the 27th. Those are kind of the starting dates.
So does that mean that on Mondays is always the navigation sessions and on Fridays is always the agreements, or are we alternating those also?
Yeah. So
Okay.
the
So
13th
then
and the
on the
27th.
13th, yeah, on the 13th it would be, and I can't read it, so I'm just going to make something up. It's the agreements, and on the 27th it would be the navigation, and on the 16th it would be the navigation, and on the 30th it would be the agreements.
Yeah,
Something like
that.
Okay.
Yeah, one
Okay.
way or the other.
Right.
Oh,
Well, I think that this is actually I don't I think I'm like whatever because I'm not a facilitator. This this is probably it kind of makes sense that if we can swing it, that we have them start at the same time as we start everything else. Um, do we have anything else? Oh, I'm so tired. I can't think. Or is it just navigations? No, there's other things, right? And I
There's
can't look at
tons.
this. Yeah, okay. And when have we decided to start the things that we've already decided to start? The 10th?
Yeah,
That's
the
when
10th,
yeah.
yeah, is connect the dots.
Okay. So it would make sense to just start everything at the same time, I would think. So that would mean that whatever the agreements or the navigation or whatever on the 13th, so the 13th would be the start date,
Hmm.
I would think.
Yeah.
Yes, because that's the next available spot. So the 13th would be the start date for the agreements and the navigation, as long as the facilitators for this agreement circle feel like they're prepared, and for both of them actually feel that they're prepared, which is it's in what that's 3 weeks, 4 weeks away, 2 weeks,
Three,
something like
three,
that.
close. It's three plus 3.5 weeks.
Okay. So over to Ronnie.
Yeah, I think starting the 13th is great. I think starting that second week of September makes a lot of sense. And I'm realizing we've actually now scheduled two different kinds of events at once, which is great progress. So, yeah, I have nothing to add about that. Over to Ben.
I unfortunately have something to add, which might complicate it slightly. I was just realizing what Roland was saying in terms of having that first event where people show up with their projects. Having, and I think we talked about this before about having like an orientation session for the semester, and that should happen first.
Hmm.
So we may want to push everything back a week or two and have that orientation session. And uh but yeah, anyhow, that would be, and I think it really would just be push it back a week and slide the orientation session in a little bit earlier. And we can um yeah, and actually we might want to offer multiple orientation sessions, different times, just to, and the other thing I was thinking about as we were talking about this is one of the things I have on my list, and I think we should all do it, is to think about who who are concrete people with names rather than thinking abstractly in terms of people out there that we would want to come to the navigation sessions and to the agreement sessions. And we could actually run, rather than coming up, I don't think we want to tweak it too much, but I think we could come up with our schedule, run it past the people that we actually like, talk to Austin, you know, um, talk to April, talk to Austin, talk to a few people like Amir at Abundance Farm and say, here's what we're thinking about doing. Would you be, how does that sound to you? I don't want to make it too complicated, but I feel like the other thing too is we have the pattern, and so it's either the first one in the pattern or the second one in the pattern, or as soon as we can get to it in the pattern. But like the Friday, the alternating Friday, the alternating Monday, when we actually start it is kind of a minor consideration as far as I can see. Rambling, sorry, over to you, Roland.
I have a question about the orientation. I totally get your point, and I agree. And do the orientations have to be live or can they be recorded? Do we know what we want to put on the orientation? I'm thinking about my school experiences where everyone comes together. There are thousands of people in an auditorium and there's somebody in the front giving you the orientation. There's no room for questions. So it's essentially it's a recording, except that you're there. And then the first class, the first class that I would go to would have sort of a mini orientation at the beginning of the class. So sort of looking at, is that a potential model for the orientation? Over to Ronnie.
I have two thoughts. First thought is, in terms of scheduling the orientations, why don't we use those first two spots that we've already designated, the first Monday and the first Friday, as orientation times? Because we already know that some people are free for those times. My second thought is, let's do it live and also record each of them. And I see the orientation as a mix of, here's information we're giving you and also interactive. So this is a chance for us to ask, what are you working on? What are your projects? And so from the get-go, we have, and then anyone who's watching it back, they can get inspiration from other people's projects and be thinking about their own project, so that when we start the navigation sessions, people are hopefully more ready to go and dive in. Yeah, that's what I got. Over to Ben.
Well, you stole my one thought and then you upped it by one. I think that's brilliant. I like it, of using the first two sessions as the orientation. And I had the same thought about I don't want it to just be information out. I think that people, like you were saying, Roland, that opportunity for people to talk about, here's what I have, here's what I'm working on, here's what I'm interested in. Even people being able to kind of connect, pick buddies, if there's some similar projects, if people are in a similar, like maybe the people who are still launching their lifeboat actually form a pod where they work together, since they don't have a lifeboat yet. That they could have like a proto lifeboat. But I think, yeah, giving people an opportunity to share what they're working on and to make some connections that way would be really useful. Over to you, Roland.
Agreed. Over to Ronnie.
Awesome. So in that case, the 13th and the 16th would be orientation times. Awesome. And then after that, we'll move into the schedule as discussed. That sounds great.
Here we go.
And I also like the idea of sending out the schedule to folks, to just check in and see. And we don't need every time to work for everybody, but is this workable for you? Are there some things that you can come to regularly?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, over to you, Ben.
Yeah, I like it. I think I'm good there. Nothing to add. Roland?
Nothing to add, Ronnie.
Awesome. So let's see if we can schedule at least one more thing in the next 15 minutes. I am optimistic. Ben, do you want to share Asana, or I can share Asana?
Why don't you share it?
Yeah. I'm going to check this off because we did it. It happened.
Woo! Flying otter, flying otter.
No, maybe next
otter.
time. All right, so webinars. Actually, I'm going to go to deep adaptation first because I think that's going to be quick.
Uh-huh.
So we talked about the deep adaptation for sessions starting after Connect the Dots. Connect the Dots is already on the calendar from Tuesdays from September 10th to October 8th. So consideration I had was, do we start immediately after Connect the Dots ends or have a break. Because we agreed we would keep going on Tuesdays because Tuesdays seem like a good time. So yeah, do we want to have a break in between? Over to you, Ben.
When we talk through Connect the Dots, I think we are thinking there are 4 sessions for Connect the Dots. And so I'm going to split the difference and say, let's keep the October 8th as either if we need an extra session for Connect the Dots or a break. And then start the deep adaptation questions on the 15th, whatever the Tuesday after the 8th would be. That would be my vote, my proposal. Over to you, Roland.
Yeah, I agree with that. Thinking not of the first session, but of the last session, which would be mid to late November. And anytime after that, we start losing people. People start to head towards the holiday season. So that seems like good timing. If needed, we might be able to shift things over for the last session to be right at the end of November. But I think that having that extra session after the Connect the Dots as a spare or as a blank is good, and the timing is good for the end of the four conversation, the four questions thing. Over to Ronnie.
Yeah, I think that's great. And also potentially facilitation can get together that week in between to discuss deep adaptation stuff if needed. So yeah, I think that's a really good idea. And yeah, so great. Let's consider that scheduled and I will check it off. We didn't get a cool animal. I don't know what's going on. Awesome. All right, we have 11 minutes. Let's look at the webinars. So the 2 that we talked about that felt most important are the Sociocracy 101 and the DIY, the 5-step How to Build a Lifeboat webinar. So considerations are how many of each do we want to do, keeping in mind that these are also already recorded. We can record them and share them out. And then, of course, when do we want them to happen? Over to you, Ben.
Wow. I'm torn. There's a part of me that feels like, the calendar's getting full and people will feel overwhelmed with too much. But then I also feel like the sociocracy, there's a lot of interest in sociocracy, and the experience at Foodlands reconfirmed that I prefer Sociocracy 3.0. And I would really like to be offering it as an alternative to the Sociocracy for All. And what actually, just as an aside, what came clear to me is I think what's missing, at least in the way I was seeing the Sociocracy for All being used, is it doesn't really capture the spirit of the circle process. And I think that there's something about pairing how to use a circle and how to use sociocracy together, that this sociocracy imbued with the spirit of the circle is more powerful than sociocracy without it. So I think of the 2, I would definitely be more interested in offering Sociocracy 101 earliest, before the DIY. And actually, you know what? The DIY, I think, makes sense after the Connect the Dots Club concludes. So maybe like an October date for the DIY lifeboat. And actually, the orientation is going to serve. What I was thinking about doing actually was that the orientation is really step 3 in the DIY lifeboat. So we actually start by offering a facilitated step 3, encourage people to attend the Connect the Dots Club, and then we can do the whole 5-step thing following that. In the spirit of an experiment. Just some thoughts. Over to you, Roland.
If the date is to be in October, you could consider having it on the week of the break, but not necessarily in that time slot. It doesn't need to be in the same time slot if you're keeping that open as a potential overflow time for the connect the dots. But if there's potentially something, a blank in the curriculum there, maybe that week would be a good week to have it on. The one thing that I would like for the facilitators to consider is a distribution of facilitation tasks. I have heard through the grapevine that there are some facilitators who feel like they have already too much on their plate and they can never get to the tasks that they have on their to-do list. And so is there a way of the facilitator, not all facilitators, sorry, I'm having a hard time pronouncing words right now. Not all facilitators have to be at all of the sessions at the same time, as a way of spreading out the work. Over to Ronnie.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And both of these webinars are already well documented and outlined. So it's something that other people, myself included, I think could pretty easily take on. Also just really good practice. Like I would love to be able to explain sociocracy more concisely to people. I feel like I can do a pretty good job, but I think it'd be really good practice. I really like the idea of having the DIY webinar the week after Connect the Dots, because it also Connect the Dots will be fresh on people's minds. And then we have the webinar. Here's what we were, collecting all of this, connecting all of these dots and collecting this information and kind of sorting through everything. Here's what this process is about. It's time to sort of switch gears to being more in that sort of hands-on planning and building it out phase. And then, so we do that webinar, and then the next week, deep adaptation sessions start. And that's another space to kind of dive into, as I'm building my lifeboat, what are the things I want to take with me? What are the things I want to let go of, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that all fits together really well. And yeah, so basically it's picking a day that week. Do we want to keep it on Tuesday night? I kind of like the idea of having it on Tuesday night just to keep the consistency and also not have to schedule another thing or another day. And then for sociocracy, I think earlier makes sense. I am also thinking about, we're starting mid-September basically, and we have a running start. We have a lot happening in September already. So is having the sociocracy webinar in September also a lot for people versus also sometime in October or sometime I don't know. I think we could still do it in September. I'm just feeling like it could be a lot. It might not be a lot. I don't know. Over to Ben.
thought. Because I think that the sociocracy could, so I'm liking all of our sequencing and the way things are connecting. And I think that we can actually make more space in the calendar. I think we can go through mid-November easily and keep people, especially if they're already engaged. So right now the plans kind of end early November. I think we can go through late-ish November and still have everyone. If we think of the fall semester as building the foundation that people need for starting in January to actually go full bore building their lifeboat. So, the whole fall semester is kind of getting you ready for your project, which begins in January. Then I think some of that urgency, you know what I mean? It's like you're not having to build your lifeboat this fall. You're actually getting all of the fundamentals and everything you need to know. Sociocracy is so fundamental. It seems to me like it is part of the orientation. And it also seems like it is a draw. It's a thing that other people know about and are interested in. And I think people would be interested in our version of sociocracy. So here's my proposal is that we don't start Connect the Dots until the 17th. And we do Sociocracy 101 on the 10th. And then that would be that second week of September would be Sociocracy and the 2 orientation sessions where we could also be talking and getting people interested in Connect the Dots, which would start on the 17th. So Connect the Dots then becomes kind of your first, course. And then the agreements and the navigation sessions are what do you call them? Like the discussion group around the coursework. And then we do, that would push the Connect the Dots Club back 1 week. And then we push the DIY. So that happens in the gap the next week. And then the deep adaptation starts the week after that. So in the end, we're going to move our last deep adaptation session back 2 weeks. But I think that'll still work. That's my a shoot from the hip amendment. Milan, over to you.
The way that you're talking about it, I'm seeing a sociocracy as kind of being part of the orientation. Am I paraphrasing that properly?
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great. Over to Ronnie. I agree, over to Ronnie.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, sociocracy is how we work. This is like it's foundational to everything that we do. So I think that's really smart. And I like that. That makes the calendar feel more spacious and yeah, I feel like this is so nice. I want to wrap it up and put a bow on it, actually. It just make like all the work we've put in it up until now to flesh this out. And now I feel like we have a calendar and it makes a lot of sense. And now I'm like, okay, let's open Miro again and put it all on there. So
I'm doing it right now.
okay, great. Can we see it?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was just moving. So connect the dots and then so this will be so Sociocracy 101, then the 2 orientation sessions, then connect the dots, and then just moving these guys back. And then the oh, I guess. And then the DIY would happen here on the 15th. Actually, I think we could leave. We can also play with that. Anyhow, that's yes, there, done. Sorry.
Can we put DIY there?
Mhm.
Because we do have the outreach meeting that week
Oh,
too,
DIY.
but
There we go.
I guess that's
Oh,
not a
cool.
huge deal.
So DIY on which
On
do
the
we want?
15th.
Okay, there we go. And then Sociocracy 101. Print that out. There.
What is if you can you go back up to September?
Mhm.
Just looking again at when the navigation sessions, where did they go?
So agreements that go, I only put in the first one, so when they turned into the orientation sessions, they disappeared, but they would be,
Oh, I see. So
oh,
agreement
here,
starts at the end.
11th and 14th.
Okay. Okay.
And it makes sense to start with the agreements. How do we want to work together? You
Yeah,
know,
totally. Wow.
cool.
We did it. All right. So we have scheduled the things that we wanted to schedule today, which is amazing. And we have our calendar and um, amazing job, everyone. This is great. And we will be reconvening on Monday at our coordination circle to do that thing of bringing everything together to sort of tie a bow on it and figure out next steps for getting the word out and talking to, running it by people, feeling it out, seeing how other people feel about it. And then we'll go from there, I suppose. Awesome. All right. Well, take care, everyone, and we'll see you soon.
All righty. Good
Bye.
job. Bye.